some of the follow-up to yesterday's announcement on Instagram by Travis and Taylor is around the notion of a prenup. Now, who knows whether this is accurate or not? By many accounts, the prediction of what each of them is worth is this. Taylor, $1.6 billion. Travis, $90 million. I think we would be happy with either of those figures, but of course, there is a big discrepancy between what each of them are allegedly worth. So the question becomes, if you're a lawyer, and let's be clear, they've both got lots of them, I have no doubt. What would you recommend in the way of a prenup? Joining me to talk about that is Christopher Yu of Shulman and Partners. Welcome to the show, Christopher.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me on.
So just in a general sense, if someone comes to you or someone at your firm and says, I think I need a prenup, what's the advice that you give back?
I love it when people come to see me for prenups because I think it's the step in the right direction right off the bat. People often jump into marriage without knowing anything about what they're actually contracting into and what they're doing. So coming to see a family lawyer, you educate yourself about what happens when you get married. So I always applaud my clients first and foremost for doing that. Then I talk to the client and I make sure that they understand what a prenup actually is. All a prenup is a set of rules. What's going to happen to my property and support if we were to separate? That's all it is. So I explain to them what does the legislation provide for you by way of property and support if you were to separate, and what, if any, decisions would you like to make to modify that regime? So that's how I always start talking about prenups, and I love it when people come to see me for them.
And obviously, we think about money and assets, but in the situation of a Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, there's a whole bunch of other things that are involved. How far down sort of that list of things would you go with someone who has a complicated set of portfolios like these two individuals would? I'm thinking about, future music rights and endorsements and those sorts of things.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm going to qualify this by saying, obviously, they're in the States, different states have different rules, different provinces have different rules. But if this were in Ontario, the only thing you can deal with in a prenup is property and support, right? You can't deal with anything else, can't deal with children's issues or anything like that. So for Travis and for Taylor particularly, I would imagine what they would probably want to do is say, the very basic, what's yours is yours, what's mine is mine. So Taylor's probably going to say, all of my future earning from all of whatever businesses I have, my music is mine, my businesses are mine. Travis is probably going to say, I'm okay with that because I've got a lot of money myself, and whatever I earn from my podcasting, from my remaining days as an athlete, that remains mine. If we decide to buy something together and we put in our joint names, that becomes joint. But really just laying down the rules and the groundwork for what's going to happen after they get married and even before they get married, and just spelling that out so that both sides are comfortable and happy with those terms. I would certainly, if I were advising Taylor or Travis, run through each of their businesses and each of their different sources of income just to really make sure that they understand all of these things can be hived off and whether or not they want to do that.
And again, you make the point, I'm chatting with Christopher Yu, partner at Shulman and Partners. You make the point that different states, and in our case, then different provinces have different rules around family law, et cetera. But let's assume you're in Ontario, you've got some significant assets. I mean, can you truly do everything I'm coming in with remains mine and everything you're coming in with remains yours, period?
Yes, you definitely can. And actually, a lot of people do that. That's one of the more common prenups. We call them prenups, cohabitation agreements.
Sorry, what'd you call it?
All the same thing.
What'd you call it?
Oh, a prenup. It could be called a cohabitation agreement or a marriage contract as well. Yeah, so those are all the same thing. But yes, absolutely. People do that all the time. They'll say, I'm coming into this, whether it's a marriage or we're just moving in together. Let's say I'm bringing in this house. It's in my name. I'd like to make sure that this house remains mine if we were to separate. As long as both sides agree, you can put whatever terms you want in a cohabitation agreement or a marriage contract.
And there's no rules around that because I was thinking, people have pensions that won't vest until much later. People may have unexpected windfalls from people passing away. Recipients from wills, that sort of thing. Even though it comes into your possession at the time of the marriage, it still can be protected, or does it have to be protected once you get it?
Nope, you can protect yourself even if it hasn't materialized just yet. Like I said, you're laying a set of ground rules down in these types of contracts. So if the rules for this contract say whatever I get remains mine and doesn't get shared with you, then and if the other side agrees to that and both parties have independent legal advice and they both sign off on that, that could very well be the set of ground rules for you guys over the course of your relationship. So yes, you can do that.
And I recognize this isn't taking into account the emotional piece here, but based on what you've just told me, why wouldn't people do prenups?
Sometimes people, they don't like the idea of a prenup. Some people think you're setting yourself up for divorce down the road. I don't look at it that way. I think that, whether or not you choose to have a prenup is a very obviously individualized decision. Some people, they know what they're signing up for, and they still decide not to get one. That's perfectly fine too. They'll just rely on what the government has made for them in terms of their prenup and the set of rules that the government's put in place. Some people just don't want to pay for a prenup. They don't want to, they feel like they don't have enough to justify having a prenup. There's many reasons why people choose not to do them. But like I said, I think the most important thing for people to understand is at least have that discussion to decide whether or not it's worth it for you guys to have a prenup. I think that's the important first step that needs to be taken.
All right, I'm going to be a little gossipy here. Is there anything really juicy that's happened in your work with prenups?
Really juicy. I've dealt with a lot of prenups. I've seen, without naming names or anything like that, I've seen people come to different types of deals, people that are worth, 9 figures and things like that. And a lot of the times it doesn't have to be juicy. It doesn't have to be crazy. It's just people that are going into a relationship or going into a marriage that have decided for some reasons or others that this is what we want to do. This is what we want our set of rules to be. Whether that's, I'm not going to share certain assets with you because they've got sentimental meaning to me, or I don't think it's fair that you might share in all of these things that I'm bringing in. People have, for varying reasons, different things that they want. So that's I can't put anything super juicy other than to say I've seen some pretty substantial figures being waived and entitlements being waived in that sense.
Interesting stuff. Christopher Yu, he's a partner at Shulman Partners. Thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
No, thank you so much for having me on.